Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is the Ukraine war news update for the 27th of April 2023. I was watching TV just now and BBC were telling me it's Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Week. So I'm going to make you aware I've got multiple sclerosis and it sucks. So there, job done. Excellent. Thought I'd clear that one up. Right, let's go to the opening gambit to my usual news reports, which is to go to the Ukrainian losses for the Russians from the day before. This is what the General Staff released, all the usual caveats. I find them indicatively useful. Indeed, what it tells me is that the front lines are somewhat quieter compared to what they have been even over the last week or so. We've moved from the late 600s now down to 510 liquidated personnel. I was interested. I was listening to Ukraine, the latest podcast yesterday, and Don Nichols on there was quoting the averages from the defense intelligence that have been averaging these figures over the last month and said they're 300 or so fewer people are dying on average than at the height. And he stated that these figures mean dead, injured, wounded, missing, POWs. He actually thinks they include all of those. So as I've said before, there is still some debate. I know people on the thread say no, it definitely means dead 100%, and it may well do. But there are certainly people out there who interpret these figures in different ways. There is not a uniform understanding of what these liquidated personnel mean. And I know liquidated for us and the original word, and there's arguments over that and whether actually they chose the right word. There are some people saying that it was just the wrong word used and so on and so forth. Anyway, whatever. It just gives you, for me, it gives me a sense of a trend. Right, it starts getting a little bit more accurate when you come to pieces of equipment. These are much more visually verifiable. So 2 tanks, yeah, not so much. 16 APCs, okay, that's a big number. So a large number of APCs lost yesterday, or at least recorded yesterday. 10 artillery systems and 3 MLRS, multiple launch rocket systems. That's a big set of numbers there. That's going to be very useful for the Ukrainians over the average. Certainly MLRS as well. We know that they are explicitly targeting artillery systems, for example, the counter-battery work that's being done around the Dnipro River. 3 MLRS, those MLRS systems are obviously, pretty annoying, to say the least, for any defenders. 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. I have footage of an S-300 being taken out. If that's the case, that is a really high-value system. But yeah, one anti-aircraft warfare system is always useful if it is not just, say, an autocannon. Even that's obviously more useful than not. 21 drones. There are consistent drone attacks overnight, every night at the moment. And it seems that there were quite a few yesterday. They also seem to be taking drones out quite a lot. And I'll just mention this in a second, just in general daily activities. 13 vehicles and fuel tanks. So I think some interesting statistics there. Let's go and delve a little bit into it. Now, this is what I wanted to talk about. This was from yesterday afternoon. So this would have been updated. There would have been more shot down, I would have thought, subsequent to this, and given the overnight attack as well. What I wanted to note here is this shape there. That's a Lancet loitering munition kamikaze drone, and that shape we never used to see on these infographics. And I have a feeling, and I'd be interested if anyone else has more knowledge about this. I have a feeling that they are being more successful in taking out loitering drones than they used to be. I don't know whether this includes loitering drones being taken out on nets, so kind of destroying themselves before they hit the target. So perhaps they're counting those, or they are shooting them out of the sky more successfully, or using electronic warfare to bring them down. But it certainly seems that there is a greater number of Lancets every single day at the moment. You see at least a couple of these on these sorts of summary sheets. But yeah, there was drone activity last night as well. Right, this was pretty newsworthy, and there's lots of footage of this kicking about from as it happened and after. This is a MiG-31 fighter crashing inside Russia. The aircraft was visibly on fire before the crash, according to reports. 2 crew members managed to eject before the plane hit the ground. So there you have. And that's obviously going to be a huge loss. MiG-31s yeah, any fixed wing aircraft is going to be a loss to the Russians, whether it happens on the front line or behind. Of course, it just means they've got fewer airframes to rely on, and there's lots of footage of that after the fact as well. And I think there's sort of geolocations where that is, etc., etc. Now, here we have a Ukrainian 9A330TLAR, the Tor air defense system. This was taken out by a loitering munition or a Lancet drone. The reason why I'm showing this is it shows that Russians are still exacting quite a cost on the Ukrainians with their Lancet drones, and although that might be fixable, and someone like Andrew Perpetua is talking about actually the back of the vehicle isn't as serious as maybe other parts of it, etc., etc. It might be fixable, but that's not really the point. That's been taken out of action, I would have thought, for the time being. What there is also this footage here, which is I think, does it show it smoking again though afterwards? No, it's just at the beginning. So I don't know what that refers to. But anyway, the point from Trent Telenko is really important here. This is a visual on why you need lots of air defense barrels in mobile air defense combined arms teams. This is a forgotten lesson from World War II air defense. Every modern missile launcher and every radar system like these needs its own shoot-on-the-move autocannon barrel, or one that is escorting the launcher. Yeah, this seems to me really sensible. Why does every one of these not have a Gepard next to it? Okay, they need to be having Gepards near cities to protect, so on and so forth. But the value of these air defense systems is so high that I would just say, right, they can't move unless they've got an autocannon going along with them, unless they've got some kind of air defense system. Just super important. Really, really important. Seems quite obvious to me. Right. On the other hand, the Russians have lost an S-300 PSTEL destroyed by the Ukrainian Defense Forces somewhere in the border area. Here's some footage of it blowing up. Someone with some kind of GoPro or mobile phone running with it. Yeah, there you go. So that would be a huge loss to the Russians. S-300 are very capable air defense systems. And you can bet, I said this yesterday, you can bet your bottom dollar that they are trying to hunt out as many of those as they can, the Ukrainians. Right, Ukraine and Russia conducted a prisoner swap yesterday. One of the things that was being pointed out by a lot of people is how miserable the Russian POWs looked, returning back to the Russians. They looked really miserable. Indeed, this is Russian TV. Just the guys look really, really miserable. And then when they're like receiving their stuff, they're just walking, getting bags with like goodies or whatever. Just everyone looks really, really miserable. And then there's other footage of the Ukrainian refugees just being so overjoyed that they're eating an apple. He says, I've dreamed of an apple for a year. Quite touching. Anyway, I won't dwell. You get the idea. Russian attacks. So this is just a normal, there's nothing unusual about this tweet out from the Kyiv Independent. It's just a summary of the activity yesterday. Why I'm telling you this is because we forget how widespread these artillery barrages are. So Russian attacks hit 9 Ukrainian regions, killed 7 civilians, and they struck 147 settlements using various weapons. Ukraine's Defense Ministry Center said today. According to local authorities, at least 32 people were injured. Just a widespread use of a varied set of pieces of equipment and ordnance to it seems predominantly hit civilian facilities and infrastructure. Although, as I always say, that's what the Ukrainians are going to say, and that's what the Russians will say. So, you've only hit civilian infrastructure, and they won't tell you about important military targets that are hit. And I'm not saying that I know that any were hit or weren't hit, but we just don't know. Update, 1 killed, 15 wounded in a Russian attack on Mykolaiv. So Mykolaiv was hit. Now, there are various claims that it hit with S-300 air defense missiles that I said that you're going to see a lot of these, and then being used because they've just got lots of them. And then there are claims that there were cruise missile. We've got videos of the missiles hitting Mykolaiv, a characteristic whizzing sound of an incoming cruise missile can be heard. The word is that Mykolaiv was hit with 4 Caliber cruise missiles fired from Russian warships in the Black Sea. And then you've got this footage, which is crazy video of a person recording tonight's Russian missile strikes in the Ukrainian city of Mykolaiv being nearly killed by the blast. The strike caused damage to the apartment and wounded the cameraman. And then the sound goes, and it's just, yeah, just imagine having your apartment or you're next to your apartment or somewhere very close, just being slammed by a cruise missile on S-300. Just, yeah, it's scary. And, this is a civilian area. This is someone in their apartment. I mean, this is evidence. Someone in their apartment recording getting hit by a cruise missile or an S-300. Yeah, is that a war crime? It kind of looks like one. Jeez. Local media in St. Petersburg also reports an explosion near the airport. So there's been this report that St. Petersburg airport or near the airport has been hit. Still no word on the cause. Locals are saying a lot of emergency vehicles are passing, according to that particular report. Just don't know any details about that. We'll wonder what comes out today. A Ukrainian journalist has been killed by Russian snipers in an ambush near Kherson. I don't know exactly where this happened and whether it was someone shooting across the river or exactly what the situation was here. But you had a Ukrainian fixer journalist who was helping a Republican Italian journalist who was also wounded, but the Ukrainian journalist was killed, which is really sad because obviously they were clearly wearing press bulletproof vests, said press on. If you're a sniper, well, unless you're firing at night, I don't know that there's too much of an excuse there, but I don't know, mistakes happen. But even so, you're shooting into, I assume they're shooting into like just a general city civilian area, so incredibly dubious activity. A Ukrainian partisan underground eliminated another Russian collaborationist in occupied Melitopol. Alexander Mishchenko is deputy head of the occupational police department. His car blew up outside the house, and there are varying opinions on collaborationist activities and what that constitutes, etc., etc. Russia on fire still happening. This is in Tyumen in Russia. An apartment block looks likely uninhabitable for many a long while. No one was injured. The building was evacuated on time, and it's a significant fire there. These fires are really causing a problem. Now, this isn't a Russia on fire. This is basically just a kind of random sidebar here. But this is a crash. No one was injured here. They all got out okay. But when I watch movies, sometimes films, you see cars like hit something and then explode hugely. And you think, cars don't really explode like that. But apparently sometimes they do. Insane. Absolutely incredible. So anyway, that was a car crash causing some, pretty big explosions. Nothing to do with the war. I just thought, Russian Center for Science and Culture in Nicosia in Cyprus has received 2 Molotov cocktails. So we are seeing, we've seen embassies have blood or red paint thrown outside them, yellow and blue paint, all sorts of things happen. But here's as far as I can remember, the first kind of like, dangerous damage, fire, Molotov cocktails, and so on, pertaining to Russian establishments outside of Russia and Ukraine. Anyway, so those are hits and losses. There's so much to go through today. Sorry, it might be a bit of a long one. I need to get rid of that. There's too many tabs open. Right, odds and sods. Got footage now of entrenchments being dug quite extensively across the Dnieper River. Here, Brady Efrick is, as ever, documenting these. So anyway, just to let you know that, yeah, there are challenges to getting across the river in many, many places. This is interesting from Dimitri from More Translated. Catching up on Gherkin's live stream from the 22nd, so this is like 5 days ago. I genuinely think the man is either at the breaking point or is close to giving up. Slow speech, looking down, no enthusiasm. Even when expressing criticism, he usually raises his voice dramatically. Only 50 minutes versus easy 2 hours he used to do. No shenanigans with the angry Patriots club appear to truly cheer him up. So this is there's been this idea that he's been skating very close, on very thin ice and close to the line recently in his criticisms, open criticisms on Putin and the MOD and the Russian government from an ultra-nationalist viewpoint or stance. Now, there have been claims that, goodness me, he's going to be close to falling out of a window soon. Whether he's receiving those kind of threats, whether he realizes that the war is basically one big shit show, I don't know. But interesting that his demeanor represents a position that could be one of those. Russia's Deputy Minister of Defense for Logistics, Colonel General Mikhail Mizintsev, has been fired. Referred to as a butcher of Mariupol, he led Russian forces in Mariupol and is responsible for many war crimes, including the Mariupol theater bombing that killed 600 civilians. That is interesting because it's actually, he's not the only person that's been fired or moved around. There's been quite a few people within the Russian MOD who have been moved hither and thither. So that is representative of things not going well. You don't move generals around. You don't move your high military figures around if your war efforts are going particularly well. Right, moving on to military aid and whatnot. Ukraine will receive weapons on it for the offensive in time, General Kravody said. So he's a NATO general, the top general of the US in Europe, stated that more than 98% of the military equipment promised to Kyiv has already been delivered. This is massively important. So all those lists of things that I come up with, they're going to give this, they're going to give that. 98% of it has already been delivered. And this is because most often when they announce what they're going to deliver, they've already delivered them. You know, they deliver them on the quiet, sly, and then say, oh, by the way, we're going to give them this. It's already in Ukraine or Poland or Germany or wherever, getting trained on. So that is really important and good news for the Ukrainians that has already been delivered. Leopard 2 service and repair center, which will be created for Ukraine in Poland, will start operating in Poland, in Gliwice in May, on agreement between Ukraine, Poland, and Germany. That agreement has been signed, was signed at the recent Ramstein meeting. St. Petersburg, Russia, summonses with threats have begun to be sent out. The summons states that if you do not appear at the military commissariat within the specified time limit, restrictive measures will be imposed on you. They are mobilizing. They're just not admitting it openly. We've seen students have had summonses at the universities and they're supposed to be exempt. And now we're starting to get, general summonses to the general public, it seems. Russia is militarily so exhausted, says Thomas Tyner, and unable to commit to offensive action that Ukraine is pulling out brigades from the front to freshen them up for the coming offensive. So when you look at how today's figures, for example, show 500 people liquidated as opposed to 1,100 at the peak, we know that we've got a pretty safe guess that it's fairly calm across the front lines. And if it's calm, get those people out, reconstitute them, retrain them, or refreshen them, and so on and so forth. And here, this footage with obviously loads of music that has almost played states that training continues with hundreds of thousands of troops. I don't know if that's some exaggeration, but there's lots of footage of lots of troops coming out involved in training. Now, the first footage of the Patriot air defense system operating in Ukraine under the command of Lieutenant General Mykola Oleshchuk. So really good news. Is one of the most capable. I mean, I say the most capable. It depends what the context you're talking about. Is it really good for this? Maybe not as good as other things for that, but the best for this, so on and so forth. So anyway, it's one of the best air defense systems in the world, and that is now in Ukraine being used. So I'm going to dwell on this a little bit because it's super, super, super damned important possibly the most important thing that Ukraine had been given. 2 more Pentagon budget realignments have dropped, and again, we can learn much about what Ukraine has received. Now, we go through this Thomas Tyner thread that I didn't talk about it came out a week ago, was it? 23rd, yeah, 4 days ago, sorry. One of the most important things it mentions on here, is this. It says, per the Pentagon Papers, Ukraine received an IAMD IBCS EQC, and that would be amazing. This system only entered in US Army service a few months ago. If Ukraine truly received an integrated air and missile defense IAMD battle command system IBCS engagement operations center EOC, then every Russian missile entering the area of operation of the EOC's launchers will be shot down, given the capability of those missile systems. Now, what this is, okay, he talks about it here. According to rocket scientist and literal rocket scientist John Ridge, potentially the most useful contribution to Ukraine in this Pentagon package is a hypermodern IAMD IBCS EOC. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread, he says. Okay. Well, what is it? The Pentagon gave Ukraine at least one integrated air and missile defense battle command system engagement operations center. This is huge. IBCS connects sensors and effectors never designed to work together into one command and control system, so air defense commanders can see and act on data across the entire battlefield more swiftly and use their shooters more efficiently. This is the most modern air defense command and control system on the planet. In fact, it's so modern, the American Army doesn't have it yet, and they've just given the one they were due to get to Ukraine, as far as I understand it. And what this does is it joins up, as you can see, all of this stuff, it joins everything up into one kind of interface. And you put these little plug and play bits on every bit of NATO air defense, which is all compatible because you use NATO comms, and it joins them all up. And if they're not NATO ones, I think they're a designer, they can put things on them that means they can speak to them. Maybe not some of the older Soviet ones, I don't know. But the idea is that you have a map. I mean, NATO already has this. It has them in place. I think there's one in for Europe. There's one in Germany, one in Spain. And anything that comes into NATO airspace is automatically like targeted, or you know what it is, and then you can decide to use whatever to take it out. So the idea is that all of these systems are joined up together, no matter whether they're NASAMS, Patriot, SAMP-T, IRIS-T, whatever, Crotal. They are joined up, and the system can find out what is in the airspace and then decide which thing to take it out, and then you press your buttons and job done, or you communicate with the system that's nearby or the most appropriate, and then take it out of the sky. So this is absolutely massive. Indeed, so I've said everything on there that I need to say. So Thomas Tyner actually talks about this in a really good interview that someone pointed me towards, so thank you so much. When you do point me towards really good sources, I do, if I have time, dip into them. Unfortunately I can't play you all of this. I want to, it's so good. Just listen to this part.
Sorry, the question is, does Russia has anything in their bag that can destroy this kind of system?
No. That system is so new that nobody really knows how it works. There's the Polish military who knows how it works. There's the US Army that knows how it works. There's the Ukrainian military that knows how it works. And there's the Raytheon, the company who made it. So the Russians...
That's end of the list?
Yes. The US Army doesn't have the system because according to the Pentagon, they gave the first working functional system to Ukraine. So Ukraine can use... Ukraine has now 2 IRIS-T batteries, 3 NASAMS batteries, 2 Patriot batteries, and 1 SAMP-T battery that all immediately plug in. You just switch on it because it's NATO standard communications. There's a module you clip onto your system. Let's say you have a SAMP-T from Italy. You clip this on, and it connects then with the system. It's a very mouthful of words: integrated air missile defense, battle command system, engagement operations.
So it's a standard. So it's a standard so that we can understand it as if for example, we do have a standard of Bluetooth communication between mobile devices or, I don't know, cars, telephones, computers. And you do have this kind of standard for NATO weapon systems, and they just plug in, like plug and play on this stuff?
Yes. If it's from the United States, the Sentinel radars that Ukraine got, the air defense radars of the Patriots, the launchers of the Patriots, it's all plug and play. For some German IRIS-T system, which is based on NATO architecture, you can quickly build the necessary like the switch that connects between the IRIS-T from Germany and this American system.
Yeah, so a kind of interface, I assume. Okay, so based on what you wrote on your Twitter, and again, I highly recommend.
So I'll leave it there. Just loads of really good stuff in there. This is possibly the most significant thing that has come out of any bit of aid given in the last. Obviously, this is only as good as the air defense systems as well, like the Patriot, NASAMS, RST, SAMT, etc., etc. But this is hugely significant. Talking about new tech, Skynet's air defense systems are already on combat duty in Ukraine. This is a system that is developed by Rheinmetall. It's brand new. In fact, Ukraine had the prototypes and they were testing them on the battlefield, I believe. Here is one that is stationary, what they call palletized ones. You've got hook liftable ones and truck mounted ones. This is a Skynet system, and they look pretty decent, as you can see, hopefully from this.
Fire in 3, 2, 1.
So you can see how useful that might be with the amount of drones that are hanging around these days. So hugely important they have those. I don't know how many they are getting, but again, it's going to be something that you can add to, again, this network of air defense that Ukraine is receiving. Right. Reznikov, Alexei Reznikov, the defense minister, has said a bunch of things. He was kind of quoted out of context here, with the first paragraph and then forgetting to use the "in my opinion." So the partners no longer have technical restrictions on a range of weapons provided to Ukraine. A political decision to transfer of every aircraft has been made, the Ukrainian defense minister has said. But he says, in my opinion, there are no political reasons for not providing aircraft to Ukraine today. Doesn't mean to say they have. Previously, certain types of weapons were political in nature because there was an echo of the old doctrine, let's not provoke the Russians. Fortunately, our partners have practically moved away from this, but there are still some echoes. Phantom pains are still present, he said. About the ATACMS, there are not so many of them in the world, and it was a pragmatic decision not to send them. But then, of course, this phantom story with red lines 300 kilometers, suddenly a blow will be struck, and where it would not be desirable. And yet the leader of any country dreams of going down in history as a peacemaker, the ministry said. As for modern fighters, according to Reznikov, this decision is also pragmatic since partners count money. So this is actually the most important thing I think he says here. The word sustainability is important here. If you give us a plane that will not be serviced tomorrow, then it will not fly. What's the point of sending it then? None. Or if you can give aircraft today, it means cutting off the supply of other necessary assistance. Or you need to increase the budget. We will get support in the local parliament, the SIMAS, the Senate, the Congress to increase the budgetary appropriation, Defense Minister said. In addition, the issue of maintenance and repair of aircraft is also important, which also requires a lot of money, Reznikov said. Each of pilots knows that in order for a plane or helicopter to fly, he needs serious maintenance, more seriously than a tank. After all, if the tank stalls, then you can get up and go. What about the plane? Therefore, the partners are very pragmatic in making their decisions. They count the money. In other words, it's like if we give a whole load of planes, and that is a huge cost, and we can't give all this other stuff that they need on the ground, which is actually immediately more expensive. Or more needed, and so there's this kind of this trade-off that's going on. It's not the case that we can't give it from an escalatory point of view. It's just actually is a monetary, pragmatic, don't have enough, cost too much kind of decision. It appears that that's what Reznikov is saying there. Right, this is insane. Yesterday, I was sitting in my house having a cup of tea, and I was just imagining, in fact, I was probably sitting in this chair. I was imagining, goodness, why are they bothering to send these naval drones out to Sevastopol, where you can see them on the surface of the water and they have to go into the port and then they get blown up on the way in or whatever? Why don't they just I'm sure you can make up a torpedo that you can send to Sevastopol, but you can just stall it. You can put it in dormant mode and it sits under the water in the sea outside of the port, and as soon as a ship comes out, it then kicks back into life and goes and hits the ship, and it's underwater and it's a torpedo. And literally, like under 12 hours later, this tweet comes out, and I'm like, is someone listening to my brain? This is insane. So the Ukrainian Defense Industrial Complex is developing unmanned torpedoes. TLK-150 electric motor, range 100 kilometers, 20 to 50 kilograms of explosives. TLK-400 range of 1,200 kilometers, 500 kilograms of explosives. TLK-1000 range of 2,000 kilometers, 5,000 kilograms of explosives. It is stated that the device will be capable to stay in standby mode up to 3 months. That's literally what I was thinking on the day I was thinking it. I can't believe this. The guidance system will use GPS if available, or the inertial navigation system in conditions of no GPS, like underwater or during signal jamming. PS, there's currently no information at what stage of development this project is at. But, oh my goodness, this would be like... Because I always think... I'm quite a problem-solving kind of thinker. So I always think, right, what's the problem? How do you get over that? So I look at these naval drones and say, right, immediately we've got a problem. They're too visible and they're too easy to take out. So how do we make them not visible under the water? You know, you go through just this logical kind of branching database way of thinking or whatever. You say, right, here's your problem. How do we go about solving that? So you know, it's about developing this stuff. It's kind of obvious. So you can bet your bottom dollar they are thinking about and they're trying to make all these weapons that you and I are thinking about going, well, why don't they have that? Or there's almost certainly someone actually working on that, whatever that may be. Okay, geopolitics. I'm doing way too much speaking. Sorry. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has renewed threats of abandoning the Black Sea Grain Initiative, an agreement that allows a safe wartime export of agricultural products into besieged Ukrainian ports. This doesn't surprise me at all. I'm amazed, actually, that they are still kind of begrudgingly allowing this to happen. It wouldn't surprise me if Russia put a dampener on that completely. A criminal case on terrorism was opened against Alexei Navalny, who's in prison. He said this via video link at a meeting in Basmany court. I mean, he's claiming that he's being poisoned at the moment. He's lost a lot of body weight. They brought absurd accusations under which I face 30 years in prison. So again, this guy's never getting out of prison, and they just keep making up stuff about him. The investigators said yesterday that there was a separate terrorist case out of the case, that I had committed terrorist acts while in jail, and in this case I'll be tried separately by a military court, Navalny said. Just it's so sad. I mean, say some people aren't huge Navalny fans. Like he's not like the panacea that everyone thinks he might be. However, like he is your best option at the moment, and it's just desperately unfair that you would imprison opposition merely on account of them being opposition. So Zelensky has been speaking on the phone to President Xi of China. The Ukrainian president has noted his refusal to make territorial compromises in the 1-hour talk. It was apparently long and meaningful. Zelensky said, I believe that this call, as well as the appointment of Ukraine's ambassador to China, will give a powerful impetus to the development of our bilateral relations. And so there's all this talk about, you know, a closer relationship between the two. This is really important because actually China are going to be, well, they are one of the most important global players, obviously, at the moment. There can be no peace at the expense of territorial compromises, Zelensky said. Territorial integrity of Ukraine must be restored within the 1991 borders. So it's really interesting that it's entering into dialogue with China, yet still being very strong on what their expectations are. You don't want to budge from that, because as soon as you could budge back from there, you can't go back to that point. So at the very least, you've got to maintain this 1991 borders claim objective. We note the readiness of the Chinese side to make efforts to establish a negotiation process. so on and so forth. So we'll see what comes out of that. And Italian president, so not the prime minister, this is the president, voices support for Ukraine joining the EU, quote, as soon as possible. Italian President Sergio Mattarella voiced his support for Ukraine joining the EU as soon as possible, according to ASNA. Reporting a couple of days yesterday. Anyway, thank you. That's all for today. Please like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate your support. 35 minutes is a lot of news, so sorry about that. There's so much to talk about, and actually, there's loads more I could have included as well. Goodness me. Anyway, speak soon.